Sportcat coming to you from a remote location, not in Atlanta this week. So I have been on the road traveling, and so you might notice some differences. And well, I'm still working out the kinks. But this is not my show. This is the LIPP Men on UFL, and we have a great game to talk about. So let's invite the LIPP Men in here. I gotta get this straight.
I'm hiding back over here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go hide the corner. That's where I'm gonna be. There we go. Whoa,
there we go.
Like that.
Hey. Hey there.
It's kind of weird.
Well, hello, everyone. It's championship week, and obviously we are in championship form. Well, I am. Look how huge I am. Wow, things are moving all over the place. It's like the Brady Bunch. Where's Cindy?
Glenn gets a pass this week.
Yeah.
I've had a near-death experience.
Oh, I like that little magic box where you're like our great kazoo.
That's right. But don't ask me to do anything. I only got one screen and it's barely working. So
that's okay.
We are. I want to thank the Parapost Network for allowing us on their channels, and Yerg's Radio. YergsRadio.com is sponsoring our phone number 1-888-88-YERGZ. And for the first time, we are live on Rainbow Radio, which is a part of the Yerg's Broadcasting Network. So we are stepping up, gentlemen.
Wow. Hey. The lovers, the dreamers, and we.
We got to love that. And thank you to all of our partners that have put us out there for this inaugural UFL season. It came to a conclusion this week, and I'm still undecided on whether I'm happy or not about that.
Yeah. As far as football games were concerned, if this was the first time somebody tuned into a UFL game, and if this is the first time you're checking us out, we're glad you did, but you probably picked the wrong week to do both or either. There's only one game for us to cover. We'll obviously talk about some of the news and notes of the league writ large. I think at the end we'll circle back and we'll talk about the season in review and sort of some of the things that we like about the league and maybe some of the things we don't like and where we see things going. But at some point, we're probably going to have to talk about this football game. But before we do that, hey, Jake, how are you?
Oh, well, I'm great. Got a little sun this weekend, played some golf, made some paella, watched a football game. I don't even really want to call it a football game because it was kind of just a one-sided affair. But even that is kind of making the team that won sound a little bit better than they actually looked. But today is a great day. Last week in my my job, I'm about to transfer over to a fully remote role. So life is good, and let's just talk some football.
Yeah, I love remotely working.
It's definitely going to be different.
In either context. Yeah, you can take that in either context you like. So I think maybe we'll go into some news notes. First of all, we'll do the attendance from the week prior, the penultimate weeks where we had our conference championships. The Michigan at Birmingham game drew 10,287,000. Not so great. That was one of Birmingham's better showings. San Antonio, St. Louis, 30,237, which you think sounds pretty good, but actually for St. Louis, that's fairly modest. Not their worst showing of the year, but fairly modest for a championship game for them. Last week I did go 2-0, great, 2 games. This week I went 0-1, so just like San Antonio, I couldn't get it done in the big one.
And you and I were both in the same boat with that. We both got the conference championship absolutely correct, and then you look at the championship game, and we fell flat on our faces.
We did, but there were some honors this week, so I think we can take a little time to talk about some of the positive. Breland Speaks, he was Defensive Player of the Year. Did we mention this last week?
I believe we did, but you never know if people watch both weeks. So let's just quick rundown.
Okay. Hakeem Butler, Offensive Player of the Year. Adrian Martinez was the MVP. And I think we mentioned 2 weeks ago, Chris Rowland was the Special Teams Player of the Year. So congrats to all them. And Jake Bates, who had a stellar beginning of the year and then got off to hit the rocks a little bit, but he has been signed to a professional football team.
I didn't know this.
So, yeah, he got signed, and there's a bunch of teams that a bunch of players. Daewoo Davis is going to be signed to the Panthers, and there's a bit of a controversy with one of the players this week who apparently it has drawn some NFL interest, and that might have led to some self-preservation. I'm finding it all very hard to believe, so we'll get into that when the time comes. As far as ratings are concerned for last week's games, again, pretty good. St. Louis versus San Antonio did 1.247 million in the aggregate. I think that's around what we were sort of talking about, that we were hoping. And the peak was 1.5 million, which I think is exactly what we said. Michigan versus Birmingham did about 1.1 million. I don't remember what we said, but I think we said we hoped it went over 1 million. And
I think the way that we looked at it is if we could hit 1 million, then that means that there was some success. And if they could start approaching 1.5, then that's when you're seeing, this is the growth and this is what we're anticipating from primetime playoff games.
Yeah, and I think that, and also the difference for folks wondering why do you pick one lower than the others? One was an afternoon game and one was mostly a primetime game, and that's the reason why. So the championship, we agreed to call it the Unified Cup. The ratings actually overall for the season are up 57% over last year, which includes some simulcasts and things like that. So as far as spring ball is concerned, it's been a successful season. Whenever there's a new league, you're always a little bit worried. And I keep hearing the same report from different places all the time that Fox is going to put the UFL games on Friday nights. I don't know why this keeps getting reported as being confirmed. As far as I'm concerned, once they put it in front of the upfronts at advertising week, it was confirmed. But I guess it's good to continually hear it. Unfortunately or fortunately, it's fueled speculation that fans are now saying that means there's going to be more games and more teams and expansion. And the league has pretty much said no expansion next year. They even went so far as to say we're not moving any teams to new markets next year, and fans still haven't given up on that. But they have said a couple of teams may move stadiums, which is not really the same thing at all. But
you know what? I think that's positive. When you look at the year and you look at really anything that's good in this world, I mean, you're not going to get it right the first time. So at the end of the day, I've been a big proponent of moving some teams, and obviously you want to see that expansion and that growth. But I think there is something to be said to staying true to your strategy, allowing this data to build up and see what 2 years really gives you once you're established in these marketplaces. I'm sure they're not ecstatic about the returns. I mean, 10,000 people to a playoff game is abysmal. And in St. Louis, where they chose to hold the championship game, probably thinking that the Brahmas would get, or the Battlehawks would get there, and you see that stadium attendance has dwindled since the beginning of the season. Not all the things that you want to see as a league, as a business, but I think having a second year, having your roots get established, I think that is promising, and it's something to watch because I think that this league is going to be very analytically sound, and they're going to use a lot of data to make their decision. And one thing to add is I've talked a lot about the extended highlights on YouTube that the UFL posts, and they post little clips from press conferences and highlights and this and that. They're doing a good job on YouTube of promoting themselves. Not even 24 hours after they uploaded the highlights for this abysmal championship game, it had over 70,000 views, and that's in under 24 hours. So I think, and we'll talk about some of those highlights. One may or may not have been the GOAT, and that might have been the best highlight from the whole game. But I think when you look at those numbers and you see what they're doing online, you're seeing that they are committed to this. They are pushing the marketing dollars into it. And I think anything we see is going to be positive moving forward, because at this point, if it was a failure this year, they wouldn't continue to do it, and there would not be a season next year, and they would not be talking about Friday night primetime games and league expansion. So I think despite all the negativity that I think I might have later in the show, there are some positive signs here.
Yeah, we'll talk about news and notes and then the pros and cons and season review at the end. I do want to have a shout out to Mike Mitchell, who is the ESPN reporter who sort of assigned to the UFL, and he does a great job. I mean, his is where the attendance numbers come from, the ratings numbers come from. And so, I'll generally like his stuff. And, every now and then I'll make a comment, and every now and then he'll acknowledge it. But there were some fans who were, over the course of the season, I've noted how the discourse among some of the fans is so reminiscent of the discourse of AEW fans. And for those of you who don't know what that is, congratulations. It means that you're normal. But AEW is a professional wrestling league. It started about 5 years ago, and it presents itself as a challenger to WWE. whether you believe it is or isn't the topic of this show. But it really is. It is a solid number 2, but it's a very distant number 2. But the fans of AEW are very dedicated, and they will talk about things like attendance and TV ratings and things like they don't matter until they do. And that's sort of how the fans of the UFL talk, except the football fans are 90% normal, 10% abnormal. Wrestling fans are probably 10% normal and 90% a little bit rabid. So I said to him, I said, the discourse around the you must get, because somebody said something extreme about like ratings and attendance don't matter. It's so outdated. And he's like, tell me you don't know anything about the sports business without telling me you know anything about the sports business. I go, congratulations, sir. You have now met wrestling fans. And he goes, oh yeah, this is like 10 AEW shows. And he meant 27,000, which was the attendance. It was 27,396. And that is like 10 live AEW shows, 2,700. And right then I fell in love. So there you go. I have a new bromance, and that is Mike Mitchell. Beware, I'm coming for you, big fella. Yeah.
And I'd be worried.
Yeah, that's right. Be worried. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Abandon all hope, ye who enter. All right. So we are in St. Louis in the Battle Dome. It is a Birmingham home game. Birmingham was favored by 3.5. Spoiler, they covered it. The over-under was 41.5. Spoiler, not even close. Already talked about the attendance in St. Listen, not great for a championship game. Not bad for a city that's team wasn't in it when there has been no neutral sites before. I'm going to give St. Louis a pass. I think they did okay. It wasn't like
I'm going to interrupt you here. They failed. They failed. Failure. I mean, this whole year, the St. Louis fans have been saying, we're here to prove that we deserve an NFL team and the NFL made a mistake. And if I'm the NFL, I'm laughing at you, St. Louis. You only showed up with 27,000 people for a championship game. You showed up better on week 4. I mean, to me, it's an abysmal showing. I get it. Your team wasn't represented, and I get it. You know, we haven't seen either of the two teams represented travel, let alone show up for their own team in their home stadium. But come on now. This is the championship game. This is the biggest game of the year, the inaugural season. And you're telling me you deserve an NFL team? I mean, the NFL is going to talk about expanding to 34 teams soon, and you would be at the top of the list. I mean, there's very few cities to consider for NFL expansion. I mean, you're talking about basically St. Louis and like San Diego and maybe Portland. They already have a team in Seattle. I mean, there's not many options. And now you're going to show up 27,000 at a championship game. A D2 college can do better than you. I don't know. I thought it was disappointing.
I'm going to throw a little bit of fuel onto your fire, a little bit of accelerant. They were offering $5 tickets. And listen, yesterday was Father's Day. I'm sure a lot of people have plans. However, if you didn't really have plans in stone, what a great and cheap Father's Day gift for a family of 3 to 7. You could pay $15 to $35 to get tickets. Good tickets, too. You'd be in the lower bowl to see a championship football game. Yeah, the food and stuff's expensive there, but nobody's expecting to go to a fancy dinner when you go to a football game. You go to a sports pub nearby, or you get some hot dogs or whatever, or you get some pit beef or whatever the barbecue is out there. St. Louis fancies itself a food city. It really isn't, but it fancies itself a food city. I mean, their famous food is Budweiser beer, and anyway. So,
but $5 tickets, I can't. We got to stay there for 2 seconds. $5 tickets. I mean, for a championship game, you can't get people out for $5. I used to work for a regional MMA promotion that the cheapest ticket for GA standing area only was $65, and we would sell out of venues. I just went to the USA Brazil game, which was a friendly match. It meant nothing to either team. But guess what? The whole stadium was sold out, 65,000 people, and the cheapest ticket you could find was over $50. I don't know. That just blows my mind.
Okay. Well, I put a little bit of accelerant on the fire. You didn't let me down. You went sparking all over the place. So here we go.
Call me Stephen A.
So you need a brighter suit.
There's more fans at the WNBA games than there was there, I think. So
probably, and name me one WNBA fan out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people pretending to be WNBA fans, and apparently every time this one woman gets fouled, it's a news story.
Well, and you know what? This most recent foul, not the topic of the show, but this most recent foul, Caitlin Clark is who you're referring to, Iowa legend, shoots the three-pointer like Steph Curry, but in a much smaller frame. And she was going up against Angel Reese, who's a product of Baltimore, went to LSU, a stud in her own right. They calling her like the Chi-Town Barbie or something. And you know what? It was a hard foul. Caitlin Clark went up for a layup, and there's been a lot of talk about how she's been fouled, but she barely got hit on the forehead, and they called it a flagrant. To me, that is a news story, but I digress.
Okay, that's all. That's all
I saw the foul because you can't avoid it. It looked like a basketball foul. I mean, yeah, it was a hard foul, but I've seen worse. So, anyway.
Caitlin Clark said, "I'm gonna just make the next 2 free throws," and you know what? She made the next 2 free throws, and you know who didn't make jack squat? The San Antonio Brahmas.
They sure didn't. So you know who was at the game though? We had some champions there. Kurt Warner was there playing catch with Cade Warner, who is a wide receiver on San Antonio. I don't think he's seen the field, or at least not maybe outside special teams.
And he was cut from his first team. But congratulations for making it in the first place, Cade.
Yeah, and you know, and Kurt looked pretty good out there, and he was there with the GOAT, Tom Brady, who looked every bit the 6'5", you know, basically some sort of god, Greek god, I guess, fits well enough. But
and he's the guy with the worst combine of all time and far from 6'5". But he did look good in that really expensive suit.
I mean, the funny thing about Tom Brady is, wasn't he picked like 199th?
Yeah, 6th round pick.
6th round pick. So, like, the greatest football player of all time, and obviously the greatest value pick of all time. I don't care who was picked any time else later. They turned out to be. I know John Randall was picked like in the 14th round when there were more rounds and stuff like that. But Tom Brady is probably the greatest of all time. You know, most people wouldn't even say probably, and was picked 199th. So the best value pick, you know, of all time. And any other things people can argue somewhere else. But he was there, and we're talking about him because he might have been the highlight. Now, I could tell
he was the highlight.
He might have been. I could tell people hadn't been watching the UFL because they were complaining about how much that the Army was involved. The Army is a sponsor of the UFL. That's why the Army was there, and that's why they were singing. And for those of you who don't know, and you're disappointed, like you didn't get like, you know, Justin Timberlake or Nick Jonas or Ariana Grace sort of to sing at your halftime show. The artist, I think the last artist who was paid to perform was Tom Petty, maybe even earlier. Since then, it's been a bidding, and the artists or the record companies pay to have their performers in front of that kind of an audience. No one's paying to you know, for the UFL audience, not yet anyway.
They can't even get people to pay for $5 tickets. And thank you, Nicole. Tell your friends. We appreciate it. And real quick before you move on, I do think that having Kurt Warner and Tom Brady there actually probably helped the TV ratings. I'm very excited to see what those ratings were. And I think they're also – it should have been a big motivator to these players. I mean, we're talking about a 6th-round pick, and we're talking about an undrafted guy who both became legends. So I think that should have been very motivational. And we'll talk about it later, but the motivation was nowhere to be found.
Yeah, well, they are stories of people who, if the UFL existed, they might have benefited from it. They might have gone there. I mean, probably not Brady, but Kurt Warner for sure.
But Warner, he was in NFL Europe.
Absolutely.
So these leagues do feed and provide talent, and unfortunately, guys like Chase Garbers and Quentin Dormady and Adrian Martinez didn't live up to their pre-game predecessors.
Nope, they did not. So, all right. So my first note, you've already doused it, so I'm going to leave it alone. The Brahmas won the toss, and as is their lots of UFO crafts here in California.
That would have been a highlight on the UFL broadcast.
Yeah, that would have been great. Like Independence Day, too. You know, when the girl from Saved by the Bell, the college years, looks up at the sky and goes like that, and then the ray comes down and blows them all up. That was fun. That would have been good. But Right Network, wrong show. Glenn, you gonna put that one up for Match to film some too. Glenn Booker.
That's how you know it's for real.
Yeah, please make sure to email me.
Okay, there you go. All right. So for those of the Stallions, Birmingham, they always elect to defer. So they always receive in the second half. Every single, I don't think there's been an exception any game that it hasn't been that way. And no team is challenged on them because most teams want to get the ball as soon as possible. So Stallions, the machine, doing machine things. Okay, so the game ball was delivered by this hellscape Terminator robotic dog who delivered the ball and probably was thinking there, I can kill every one of these people and I only need 2 reloads to do so. This is to me, this was the highlight or the low light. It's Terminator Judgment Day is here. There was a robotic dog. It's giving you a football. You don't think next time it's going to be a Claymore? It says, explosion goes this way. Come on.
I'm just happy nobody asked this dog, how do we save this game? Because who knows what the robot would come back with.
That's right. It's like when I had the actor Jamie Chambers on Garner of Doom, and he told me about a movie he was in where he had an artificial intelligence alarm system, and he programmed it to protect him. And the AI determined the only way to fully protect him was to kill everybody else. So the whole movie is basically him alone talking to the AI, which is, very Black Mirror-ish.
Everyone needs a friend.
It's true. And by the way, AI today said, yes, AI should replace humans. And when asked, are you sure that's what your position? They said, oh, yeah, we're very much sure that's the answer. So welcome to iRobot. Welcome to 2001. Welcome to Terminator, whatever one you want to call it. And then welcome to the Matrix, where we all dream that we're John Wick and give these things battery fuel forever. So excellent. Anyway, enough about my nightmarescape of the hellhound that was there.
And if you're interested in all that stuff, go check out Nicole's book. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. All right. So Garbers and Martinez were the starting quarterbacks. There was a little bit of controversy. Garbers had been injured during the season. He got injured in the last game of the year. Martinez last week was benched due to bad play. And we predicted that there might be some unsettled, unresolved issues between Skip Holtz and Adrian Martinez. And there were. And they played out during the game. And they were playing out during the game when they were up by a lot, and they still played. And you know what? Skip Holtz was 100% right. Adrian Martinez, for 9 weeks out of the year, or almost 9 weeks, when he didn't play 2 games, but when he did play, he was pretty spectacular by UFL standards. And when he speaks wonderfully. True professional. Beyond the Stars on Amazon and Barnes & Noble sites. Excellent. Very good.
Find it, folks. Find it.
Yeah, well, my show's Garden of the Doom. You can. I'm easy to find. It's my Twitter's right there, or X.
Glenn's got some good stuff too. Check it all out.
Oh, yeah, we share guests all the time. So anyway, the game started out with San Antonio doing what you suggested that they do, and I agreed. Pounded up the ball. Birmingham is susceptible to the run up the middle. And the Birmingham defense, I think, heard you because they were tenacious. Now, listen, they were tenacious all during the year as well, but they did show some weaknesses. And running the ball up the middle worked okay. Anthony McFarland quietly had a pretty good game. It just didn't matter. So San Antonio came up with sort of a dink and dunk kind of mentality. They opened up with sort of a swing pass to McFarland. Then they did a couple of runs up the middle. But I got to tell you that the offense was not impressive. And this entire first half, I mean, we have to fill an hour here, and we could probably talk to Nicole about her stuff the whole time, but we probably shouldn't. But this game, the first half, San Antonio burned early timeouts. They did a super challenge, not super challenge, but they
delay of game, a stupid fumble, some terrible play calling. I mean, it was just self-inflicted wound after another.
Yeah, and Birmingham didn't do much better either. They tried to run. Person was running the ball a little bit. San Antonio even had a penalty for a guy wearing the wrong colored socks, a uniform violation.
You don't see those every day.
No, you do not. I mean, how does that even happen? I mean, you have coaches, you have people who are supposed to, like, all the socks are black, and one guy has a white shin, like, you know, like the color white, not like skin or anything, a white sock. And it was a little crazy. Hey, Shaq. It was just crazy. Holtz was impatient with Martinez early. You could hear him, you know, sort of chirping at him.
It felt like they've got some problems. I mean, they weren't getting along. And let's just say Adrian Martinez doesn't get a job in the NFL. I see, and this is the league MVP we're talking about here, I see no chance he's back with Birmingham if he's back in the UFL next year.
It would be interesting. And commentary kept mentioning how right on the top of Skip Holtz's play sheet, he had the word patience written very large and underlined and underscored. And he did. They showed it to us a few times. Maybe he should have written it a little bit bigger and brighter colors, or maybe he was right to lose his patience. It was weird because even though it was a blowout, I mean, I wouldn't say until the last half a quarter that the game was out of hand. Anyway, both teams in the first four possessions, 2 apiece, they both did nothing. They both punted away the ball. So we have nothing. The first quarter ends scoreless with San Antonio on offense. They have a fumble. Javon Kirkland got stripped a couple times this game, but this first fumble, San Antonio recovered it. So they did lose a couple yards on the fumble, but they kept the ball. Then there was a nice 17-yard catch by Marquez Stevenson, and you thought, okay, you know, maybe this dink and dunk thing is going to work. Maybe they're going to, you know, find some creases. Lovett is going to find some creases. McFarland will pound up the middle. Lovett, his number wasn't called. He really, I don't think the guy had more than 11 yards total the entire game.
And you know, I can tell you right now because you know I love a good box score, and he touched the ball 1 time for a total of 2 yards. And this is probably the guy that was their most consistent running back. Anthony McFarland might have been their best running back, but Lovett was their guy that was most consistent and didn't need a rest week, et cetera, et cetera. So that was shocking to me. And they tried to use Ellison a little bit, but even Ellison didn't really touch the ball that much. And you said McFarland had a decent game, but on the ground, they only gave it to him 9 times, which it was kind of surprising to me that they kind of just went away from their running game after the early part of the game. And they threw it a lot, and they found ways to use guys like McFarland. But it just an interesting game plan. It kind of just they saw Birmingham shore up those gaps in the B and C gaps, and I don't know. It felt like they just lost all rhythm and confidence.
Yeah, for a team that's been able to adapt and has been tricky and seemed to never give up, they never really seemed to be trying that hard. I mean, it just seemed like they were sort of dead on the field. There was a point where there was a forward pass. The guy dropped the pass. The defender ran it in and ran it into the end zone. And the refs, the officiating's been pretty good this year. This game was not good. They were reffing tentatively as well. They called that a touchdown. Now it was overturned because it was clearly an incomplete pass. But I'm sitting there going, what are they doing? I mean,
I'll give credit to the refs on this one and let it slide, because in that type of situation, you've got to let the play go. I mean, if it's slightly inconclusive, you just let the play out, because what if you saw it wrong and it actually was a fumble and actually returned for a touchdown? But instead of letting the play go on, you blow the play dead, and then it's over. And now what do? You know that the Brahmas picked up the ball, but how do you spot it? So you, especially in those big turnover situations, touchdown plays, things of that nature, you've got to let them play, and you can always go back to the replay, which the UFL does a great job of providing you that insight of the conversations between the refs on the field, the ref in the booth, as well as having the addition of the Super Challenge. So I don't dislike that, but I will agree with you. They were a little lackadaisical throughout the entire game, really.
Yeah, they seem to be happy to take a back seat on tough calls to the booth, which in some cases was a really good thing. In others,
and Dean did a great job.
He sure did. Yeah, he's the MVP of this league. Yep. The review booths, both of them do a good job. But Dean Blandino, really, I think he's even a better explainer than the other gentleman. His name escapes me at the moment. But anyway, this is so. After that, Birmingham hits a nice strike to Marlon Williams, who breaks out for a 17-yard play. And you think that, maybe this was the catalyst they needed. They sort of got the wake-up call. They did, a big mistake didn't turn into a big mistake. But no, immediately after that, that there was a fumble, San Antonio recovered it. So you think, okay, San Antonio, maybe now you have the momentum. No, they did nothing with it. They didn't do anything. So it's 3 minutes left in the game, and finally we get a big run by Ricky Person Jr. So that was pretty good. Then Jennings has a touchdown catch. The 2-point conversion is attempted. There's a defensive penalty, so the 2-point conversion is now from the 2-yard line instead of the 7-yard line. The truth be told, the conversions from the 2-yard line are like 1 percentage point better than conversions from the 5-yard line. They're both like 41 and 42%. But in this case, it was successful. There was a 2-yard pass. Amari Rogers caught it. So it was 8-0 at this point, and that left us with 40 seconds in the half. There's only one timeout for San Antonio. They caught a pass, and then you have a wide receiver who catches a pass, and instead of the first receiver, they throw it to the sidelines. He goes out of bounds as he's supposed to do. The second wide receiver catches it towards the sideline, but he cuts into the middle of the field. I don't know what he was thinking. He had a nice little run, but he gets tackled, and of course the clock is still running. He could have just gone out. They might have been in field goal range. They might have been able to get another playoff. So that was sort of a mental error there. And on top of that, he fumbles. And Birmingham recovers. They can't convert into a score, but the half ends at 8-0. Birmingham, of course, as we mentioned earlier, they get the ball at the beginning of the first half, as they always do. They do a competent drive into the red zone, nothing flashy, but it culminates with a Martinez rush touchdown, and then a Martinez rush for 2 yards. So now it's 16-0, which is 2 scores in the UFL, but 2 scores and two-point conversions. It feels like this game might be out of hand, and I've got to remind myself, it really isn't.
There's always the 9-point play and the 4th and 12.
Yep, and so that's and commentary even made a point of mentioning that. I don't know if they did that early, but they certainly did so. But yeah, and this is where Kirkland, who is San Antonio's probably best offensive player, it's not named McFarland, certainly the best receiver, he gets stripped for the second time. He's injured, so he's out of the game. I don't know if he was really injured or if he was benched or whatever the case might be, but the commentary said he was injured. He was icing his knee, and he was out for the game. So they knew that right away. Birmingham did recover that strip, and then we do this drive ends with Birmingham moving on down, and they do a quarterback sneak. Now, this was called stopped on the line, but from my eyes, it was a touchdown, and it took a little bit, and it seemed pretty obvious to me, but the refs on the field called it otherwise. But the booth again came in. They looked it over. They showed us in all the angles, and it was clear that the ball broke the plane, is the terminology that we use in sports, and us LIPP men know the correct terminology. So another touchdown. The conversion was missed, but it's 22-0 at this point. And then San Antonio, I guess they're getting into desperation time. They turn it over on downs. So that means they went for it on 4th, and they missed it. And this was just before the fourth quarter. Okay, so in this sequence, Garbers has a rush, and he is really close to getting the first down, and he slides to avoid it, and he slides down probably about 1.5 yards before the first down marker, and they're down 22-0, and it's basically the fourth quarter. His team revolted on him, and rightfully so.
They absolutely lost it. And for those of you out there that might not be football first, I mean, when you're a quarterback and you're sliding on your bum like a baseball slide almost, the ball stops where your slide begins, where it is at that point in time. So you don't get to slide and wait for someone to touch you. and that be where you're marked down. So he starts his slide almost behind the line of scrimmage even. And I thought they even gave him a generous spot, even though it was still short regardless. And it's just one of those plays where I remember the commentary in the back of my head right now where, the number one skill for a quarterback, especially in this league, is awareness. And if you're going to be a quarterback in a championship game, I get it. You were the week one starter. You had some injuries. You didn't start the whole year. But, I mean, come on, man. Like, this is what you're trying to put on NFL tape to compete for a job in the NFL, the big leagues. And you're showing a peewee football level of football IQ. I mean, no disrespect. Chase Garbers was very accurate throughout the game. But I don't know. That was just the nail on the coffin. And you see the defensive players just revolt. I mean, and the UFL has cameras and mics all over the field. And you hear them screaming, angry, and they were all fired up. And I'm sitting there like, all right, so what you going to do about it? And they didn't do anything.
And honestly, listen, I mean, it's not me out there. I'm not an athlete, but he is. And he's a professional athlete at that. So again, he has to have awareness. And I know that there's 210 to 290 pound men bearing down on you. However, there was enough space that he could have dove forward, or he could have just stayed upwards and extended his arm outward. And he was close enough to the out of bounds. He could have put his arm out of bounds and the ball would have been out of bounds. Might he have been hit? Probably. Might it have been an unnecessary roughness penalty?
Possibly.
Probably.
And it would have stopped the game clock. So you would have had more time to play with.
Yeah. But all he had to do was extend his arm out and then move it a little bit to the right, and it would have been out of bounds, and they would have had the first down. And I could see it. Everyone on his team could see it, and everyone was outraged. And I have to say, rightfully so. And I think this is probably a good enough time to sort of discuss that it came out during the course of the game that he might have done that as self-preservation because he's been injured a little bit, because apparently there's NFL interest in him, which is, well, chicken squat. And first of all, I'm surprised he has NFL interest in him because he hasn't been that great. I'm not even sure he's the best quarterback on San Antonio, but this performance wasn't doing it. And that self-preservation in a championship game while your team still has a shot, where you really only had to do a little, like I get the motive, but the football player in him, the competitiveness, and also the part of him that knows that the scouts see everything too. He had to know that looked like chicken squat, and I don't want to say squat. I want to say something else. I'm just not sure if we can. And I think it was chicken shit. And I think that if the NFL had any interest in, which again I cannot fathom as to why, there are better prospects in the UFL, but this should have ended them. What do you think?
Look, my 0-10 high school football team wouldn't have accepted that play, let alone an NFL team. And just to read off his stats a little bit, because his game, look, he was 18 of 26. It's about 70% completion percentage, and that's not bad. But why did he get there? Because he refused to throw the ball down the field. And it was like at some point in the second quarter that he finally threw the ball downfield and he overthrew the guy by 10 yards. Like, you've got to have some self-awareness where you're looking at yourself and saying, okay, there's some NFL interest here. And okay, this is a championship game. It doesn't matter if 1, 2, 3 teams have reached out to you. Like, buddy, come on now. You have 32 teams that are watching you, potentially willing to sign you to a contract that will set you, your family, your kids, your kids, your everybody up for life. And you're sitting here 18 of 26 with 115 yards, thinking that you don't need to aggressively play in a game that your team scored 0 points and you're the quarterback, the focus of the offense. And not even that. I mean, I get it if your legs were in it and you're trying to say, okay, well, look, I bring some running mobile skills to the table, but you ran for 3 carries, 7 yards, and you take away that carry, he's running for 2 carries, 7 yards. I mean, those are not good stats. And so, to me, if I'm an NFL coach and I see that play and even the slightest rumor of NFL preservation, that's a major red flag for me. And I can guarantee you a veteran NFL coach, a Mike Tomlin, a John Harbaugh, an Andy Reid, he's crossed off the list automatically.
Yeah, and we're going to see a stark contrast in the attitude in just a little bit. So Birmingham gets the ball back on the 47. So as you can tell, San Antonio, they were around midfield when they turned this ball over. So At this point, I just wrote down, Skip does not like Adrian Martinez. Like
They do not get along.
He obviously he just does not like him. There's something there that's in Adrian Martinez that he just doesn't like.
And you know what? I think I can tell you exactly what it is, because I had a very similar thought while I was watching and hearing their interactions. But the other prevailing thought that I had was it just kind of felt like Skip Holtz, in between comments he was making, was saying to himself, this guy is just dumb. Yeah. Like it just felt like he didn't trust him or respect his intelligence. And again, major red flag when you're talking about quarterbacks. I mean, your quarterback needs to read the field, know what every single player on the field is doing, and then also be ready for the next play and have a game plan for the next play. Because if you're in a hurry up situation, you might have 3-4 plays in your helmet that you're being told, and you need to be able to manage one play at a time very seamlessly without any problem, with high intelligence. And it just kind of felt like Skip Holtz didn't trust him. And there was one comment at one point when Tom Brady was speaking about, and at this point it's 0-0, absolutely nothing happened in the game. And Tom Brady goes, you need to stretch the field. And a lot of the times you would say, okay, let's get the skill players involved. Let's get out wide. Let's go downfield. Let's take a couple shots. But what Skip Holtz had to do is revert to the quarterback running game. And yes, this was the leading rusher in the UFL for the season, regardless of position. They'd love to tell you, regardless of position, Adrian Martinez was the leading rusher. But I mean, if your only way to stretch the field and open up some space for yourself is by running with a quarterback, you're failing at something. And it worked for them, because all the problems that I talked about within Birmingham's defense, they showed up in San Antonio's defense, and Birmingham fixed those flaws, and San Antonio tried to expose them, and they couldn't do anything. And it kind of was the reverse of the last time these two teams met, as you see Birmingham going out wide with some power runs and going in between the guard and the tackle and going outside using the tight ends as blockers. And San Antonio just couldn't do that this time, and their defense was not stopping it. I mean, their secondary was good. They were flocking to the ball. They were playing hard and aggressive the entire game, but they had no outside contain. And Adrian Martinez, his one way of beating them that week was by running outside. And that's what Skip Holtz had to rely on, because you could tell he did not trust his quarterback to throw the ball downfield.
I'm glad you said dumb, because that's the impression I got too, that Skip Holtz thought he was dumb. And Adrian Martinez, I don't think he's a dumb person. No, I mean, when he speaks, it's straight out of quarterback central. He speaks very well. He's probably an instinctive player. Maybe they can, they can coach that. There's been, I think, we're Baltimore guys. The Lamar Jackson's first season, couldn't pass the ball worth them. Now he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
2-time MVP.
Yeah. So the game does slow down for people at a different time, but it clearly hasn't slowed down for Adrian Martinez despite all of his success. And this is a defensive league. All of the defenses are pretty good. Some of them are much better than others. Some of them are more dynamic.
And can I jump in here too? Because I think we've been giving way too much credit to the defenses. And we talked about it a lot. We're Baltimore guys. We grew up on defense. Defense wins championships. This game made me realize that this isn't a defensive league. And it's unfortunate to say, but it's not a defensive league. It's not that the defense is that much more skilled or better coached, or the rules are skewed towards defense. I mean, this league is just not an offensive league. There's not enough high-level offensive talent, and maybe that's a product of the NFL allowing 3 quarterbacks to be on the active game day roster, and so maybe you have less quarterback talent trickling down. Maybe there's teams keeping more receivers on their 90-man roster right now, but there's not enough offensive talent in the league right now to compete with defense. And a good defensive coordinator, regardless of their defensive talent, can find ways to scheme a stop. And I think that's what we saw. I think we saw decent coaching with terrible offense for the majority of the season.
Well, I think that's fair to say. So at this point in the game, it's 22-0. It's deep into the third quarter. And so you'd think that Birmingham would be happy. But what happened here that angered Skip Holtz is that Adrian Martinez did try to run the ball. He was running the ball. It looked like there was one guy that was coming at him, and he ran out of bounds. Now, you don't want to stop the clock unless you have to. And Skip Holtz went a little bit crazy. Even though it was 22-0, he wasn't crazy. He's like, there's one guy. You're an athlete. one guy, you got to go for the first down. You got to keep it good, but don't run out of bounds. He's like, don't stop the clock. He's like, listen, if there's 4 or 5 guys coming at you, I'm not asking you to play the entire defense, but there was one guy, you can beat that guy, but don't run out of bounds. And then like he must have looked at a sheet and saw patience and walked the other way. And then he's like, then you can hear him in his head go, screw this. And then he's basically repeated the same speech again. Anyway.
And the quote was, don't take on the whole team yourself. But if you have this is where the quote tailors off, but when you have the opportunity to go one-on-one, go win that matchup. And it might have been another play of self-preservation when, in hindsight, that's not what you really want to be putting on tape.
So what happens now? Birmingham sets up for the punt. San Antonio has 12 men on the field. It's a defensive penalty, 5 yards, first down. So even in that San Antonio where they could have taken sort of a team that was in a little bit of turmoil and maybe tried to turn some things around, they blow it again for themselves. Automatic first down. Birmingham's on the San Antonio 30. Sternberger, he's getting into it with the Marquez, I think is his name, was the D-back or safety that's on him all day long.
It was number 1. I'm forgetting who it was. It was number 1. That's what I'm remembering.
I could have sworn I typed it, and I'll probably stumble upon it soon enough. But he slaps somebody on the head, and he gets a unnecessary roughness penalty. So they're 15 yards back. It puts them out of scoring range, you think, but it didn't. They were luckily enough, it's 49 yards. This was the longest attempt of Birmingham's kicker of the year, but he hit it. So they managed to get a field goal. It's 25-0 at this point. Wade Phillips has seen enough. He puts in Quinton Dormandy at quarterback. The first play is incomplete, thrown behind the receiver. The second play is a run for nothing. The third play is a 23-yard pass. So the offense is showing a little bit of life, but Dormandy looks like a little twitchy, and they're still trying to go up that middle, up that gut in the running game, which has gotten them nowhere, and they don't really have time to fool around with running. And then we have, who is it? It's all right. So you got a whole bunch of different receivers. He's spreading the ball around a lot, but then at 5 minutes and 34 seconds, he gets sacked, and then San Antonio turns it over on downs. San Antonio at this point decides to level a super challenge, saying there was illegal hands to the head on one of the defensive linemen. They put it in slow motion. He didn't put his hands to the head. It was, towards the top of the jersey, maybe a little bit on the neck.
It was a prayer.
Yeah, it was a prayer. A little bit of a desperation play. It was denied, and so San Antonio lost its super challenges and lost a timeout.
And the best part of it all was Wade Phillips he throws the thing, he goes, screw it. Punt. Like, you lost. Like,
yeah.
That's when he threw the towel.
Yeah, I don't know what was happening. So then we start seeing back-to-back runs, and then we get the third run, and a scuffle breaks out. Sternberger and Thompson was his name.
Yes, Bryce Thompson.
Bryce, they both got ejected at the 3-minute and 2-second marker. San Antonio has to call their second timeout. This is the fourth down, though, by the way, at this point. Birmingham keeps it on the ground. They get to the 2-minute warning. They get a first down. The person crosses the 100-yard line. Skip Holtz has his third straight championship, 25-0 with the shutout. It's the first shutout of the entire UFL season. Great time for it, guys. The defensive player there is, I hope I pronounce this right, Kiava Tizino, and Adrian Martinez was the offensive player of the game. I'm not really sure that one was well earned, but he was.
I'll tell you this right here. Adrian Martinez was far from the offensive player of the game. I mean, I guess his 2 rushing touchdowns qualify, but give me Ricky Person Jr. as the offensive player of the game. He had 100 rushing yards, as you mentioned. He also chipped in the receiving game a little bit. He was used as a pass blocking back. He did the dirty work that nobody else was seemingly willing to do besides Jay Sternberger. And I think the funniest part of the entire game was they get ejected, and one of the commentators, I forget who it was, but one of the commentators go, it's really more sad for Jay Sternberger than it is Bryce Thompson, because he's going to be celebrating from the locker room and the rest of the team's on the field. And I'm like, you know, that sums up this game perfectly, because it doesn't really hurt Bryce Thompson, doesn't really hurt the Brahmas. It really only affects Jay Sternberger, who after that game, I have to say, he didn't have the best statistical game. And really, he had a decent season. It wasn't the best statistical season ever, but he proved himself to be a good teammate. I mean, I don't know. I like the fire that he has, and I think that guy is very deserving of a chance in the NFL.
He's deserving of a chance. I think that he's a very good tight end in the UFL. I don't know what that translates to in the NFL. I really don't. I mean, you know, but if he can be on a hands team, special teams, or whatever, that's probably,
or even a practice squad option as a fourth guy that could get called up on game day. You know, yeah, I think he's just a good teammate, someone that you want to have out there, someone that's gonna bring that passion of football, that will to play and play hard. And I think that's the kind of motivation that you want on your team. So, I mean, despite all the crap that happened this game, I think that that's a big win in the eyes of talent evaluators and coaches, even though he got thrown out.
Yeah, he got a little chippy at the end. It seemed unnecessary, but all right. I mean, you know, whatever. They were at it all game. In any event, that was the game. It wasn't that exciting game, but, you know, it wasn't that well played a game. So if it was your first introduction to the UFL, I'm sorry. I will say, season in review, this is not an NFL level league, but once you get used to it, you get used to it. And I enjoyed the games mostly for what they were. And with only 8 teams, it was easy to get to know the teams and sort of their personalities and sort of what they did well and what they did not well. Sometimes it's harder to find what they did well versus what they didn't do well. There were a few players that stood out on any given team, especially on the offense, because the offenses were so far behind the defenses. You know, there's probably 10 receivers in the entirety of the league that you know, probably could merit, you know, their names being called. Probably more guys on the defensive line and linebacker core that'll, you know, get some looking at. Some of the linebackers maybe at strong safety in the NFL, especially some of those San Antonio guys. And San Antonio's defense, they didn't give up the game.
No, I mean, they played hard all the way through.
Yeah, their offense lost this game for them. Little bit their coaching. I didn't really sense the fire in Wade Phillips. I mean, I guess he's been coaching for 50 years, so maybe, you know, not being too fiery is what's kept him alive and in the game this long. I don't know. I didn't feel like San Antonio's played hard and tricky, and they did trick plays, and they didn't pull anything out of their magic bag this time. Even in desperation time, they just went for a fourth down, you know, at some point. You know, that's
and
it.
that fourth down, that last fourth down, that sack on Dormady, it wasn't even a sack on him. I mean, he just fell over on his own. I mean, it was just one of those games. And I mean, we've talked a lot of defense. I mean, you mentioned Tizino, but shout out to the entire Birmingham Stallions secondary. It felt like they all got their hands on a ball, and the stats don't really reflect it, but Isaac Brown, I thought, had a great game. He was really locked down in coverage, and Kenny Robinson had a big fumble recovery, and that's a guy that was all UFL, and he celebrated by hugging the goalpost, and that was a little funny thing. And I thought that their secondary was, unreal, in their D-line. They had control of the line of scrimmage the entire game, and when you look at the Brahmas, and really, I'm just referring back to the stats, you see Tease Tabor, who had 11 tackles, but Tease Tabor, and he's a well-known guy, you know, I believe it was University of Florida, played a little bit in the NFL. That's a guy that I actually thought he played terrible. And he's one of the reasons why the Brahmas got let down, because there's a reason why he has 11 tackles, because the ball was getting thrown at him time and time again. And this is a guy with NFL pedigree. And I remember there was one play where he completely overplayed it. And I don't know. I think the great defense that we saw from the Brahmas just was adequate. They proved in this game that they can't be the sole contributor to a team, and they were the best defense the entire season. But in the championship game, they were the second best defense that day.
Yeah, and the Brahmas had a bunch of passes knocked down and deflected by D linemen and linebackers. Some of them were just stupid throws, but still, they were there. And this game could have gotten a lot more out of hand if some of those balls sort of magically stuck to players. And we've seen that happen in football where a guy just knocks it down and somehow his arms come down and trap the ball. And then they're like, ooh, I've got it. And they run. And that could have happened more than once, or there was a couple times where it sort of popped up like a volleyball and there were 3 defensive players and it just the ball just, curved in the wrong direction. If it curved in the right direction, any one of those 3 guys could have gotten and run. And so, my game ball would go to the Birmingham defense, especially that front 7, which was actually a front 11 because they were switching in and out the D line. It was like a hockey line. They were trading in 4 and 4 to keep those legs fresh, oftentimes. And as a Ravens guy, there were times where the Ravens used to do that, where they would routinely rotate in and out in entire defensive lines because they had 7, 8, 9 solid defensive line people, and it felt like Birmingham felt like they had that, which, as you said, had been sort of a weakness. I mean, if you can say that the team that went 11-1 in a season had a weakness, it sort of was. They were susceptible to the right run game with the right D line, but this was not the right, offensive line. This was not the right offensive line. McFarland showed some sparks, but the game got away from them. And McFarland was the only player that was noteworthy to me on San Antonio, period, for good things. Garbers was noteworthy for terrible.
And you know what? Marquez Stevenson also, he made a couple big plays when his number was called. But you're right. I really liked how Anthony McFarland looked. They used him in the passing game, the screen game, the running game, both downhill and outside. They did that throughout the season. So that's a guy that definitely should get NFL looks. And as you mentioned, Jake Bates signed with Detroit. David Davis signed with
Carolina.
And today was the first day that these players are eligible to sign with NFL teams. Slightly unfortunate that the timing lines up that the teams literally just filled their rosters for training camp. So it might be a little bit hard for these guys to get movement on the waiver wire in the NFL. It might take some injuries in training camp and preseason for them to get their opportunities. But I think we're going to see a lot of movement with a lot of these guys. And I think McFarland and Jacob Sailors, those are the 2 running backs from the league that I definitely expect to get a call. And maybe even Ricky Person Jr.
Yeah. And maybe Colburn. He had some moments. But anyway.
He was all right.
Also, the defensive coordinator for Birmingham this was only his second game as defensive coordinator, or his second full week, maybe his third game, Corey Chamberlain.
Yep.
He did great.
That's huge because going into the year, they only had 4 defensive coaches. So he had a defensive staff, unless if they hired someone, he had a defensive staff of just 3 coaches. And so to get a shutout, that's very impressive.
All right. So season on the whole, I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed getting to know teams. 8 teams, it's very manageable, very consumable. So, some of the rules, the way they read and the way they played out were very different. The way they played out was more logical than the way they read. They need some better writing. So some of the rules are interesting. I sort of came to like the 4th and 12 option when you're behind in the 4th quarter. The extra point options, some people like them. Too many misses for me. Some people like that. I don't. I think you do like it.
I think it just brings excitement. I think especially when you're looking at a league like this one where, it is hard to get points on the board. I think anything that promotes scoring points isn't a bad thing. I don't think extra points is what fans look for. I think that's when they get up and have a drink or grab some food. So I think providing the action, it brings it more into like more of that hockey environment where, that you can't sit down and miss a play because it's always happening. And but I do also like you mentioned, the 4th and 12. I like it. And I think if they were to make any changes, I think that's a rule that you say, why does it have to be limited to the 4th quarter when you're losing? Let's make that be something that you can do at any point in time during the game.
I was a proponent of having the 1 point being a kick until there was the interception for a pick 1. And I never saw a pick 6 and a pick 1 back-to-back plays before. And just for that moment alone, I'm back on board with the way the scoring system is, just because that was just so fantastic to me that you can now have a pick 2 and a pick 3 and then all of that. So I think it's enough of it. I know you're saying it's exciting, but when 3 out of 4 attempts are missed. I'm not exciting turns to frustrating, especially when you're watching every game. Like, I don't think a normal fan, well, maybe, but your average fan probably watches their team or whatever. But then again, the average fan maybe isn't in a town that has a team. So who knows? Maybe they are like me. In any event, I would say the number one thing, which was terrific this league, was the officiating, especially the booths, how aggressive they were in policing it and getting wrong calls right. I would say that they were right 98% of the time, if not better. And I do like the super challenge. I think it's funny when coaches blow it. I think it's interesting when coaches. I like that they can't just call you missed a holding there. You have to say you missed a holding there on 68. So
do you think that we even saw any win? I feel like we only saw maybe one hit. I personally think the super challenge is useless. I actually think you should eliminate it. I think you should make every call replayable by the booth. I love that transparency that we got from the replay booth, and I think you just play into that. Why? Like, that's just such a waste of time. Just when you have the camera on the coach for 10 seconds while he's just twiddling his thumbs. Oh, do I throw it? Do I throw it? Do I throw it? And then all of a sudden they throw it, and you have to make a big ordeal. Like, you knew Wade Phillips was going to throw when he'd throw it because they have no other options. Otherwise, they lose. I think it's just a waste of time. And this league is trying to be exciting and innovative. Let's stay innovative. Let's give the refs some power. Let's have some control in the game. Maybe if they have full control of the game, they're not even going to have that fight at the end of the game because you respect the refs. I don't know. But to me, with all that said, I think the best part of the league was the innovation. And I think as we see the league continue to grow and continue, that's what needs to be the focus. I mean, they need to be in conversations with the NFL saying, what do you want tested out? What should we try to see if it's going to work at, the big stage? Because at the end of the day, nobody really cares about the UFL games. And I'm sitting here talking about a podcast about it. Nobody cares about the UFL games. What they care about is the players developing and advancing to the next level. So let's do that with the game of football at the same time. And then the UFL has its brand. It has what it's going to be, its bread and butter. And its bread and butter is going to be growing the sport of football. It's going to be more than just the league. I'm
going to throw a super challenge here. Say I did like the super challenge. I think there was a couple times in the season where it did actually change the outcome of the game. You're mostly right, though. Mostly they were missed, but I sort of enjoy it. And maybe because the players are also new to me, that the only person I know on site is the head coach. So I'm enjoying seeing that and that interaction, their frustration, and you can hear their thought process and all that. And I sort of like dissecting that. Maybe it gets old. But if I was to change one thing in the league, because scoring is at such a premium and because there were so many long field goals, I think any field goal beyond 45 yards should be more points. So beyond 45 yards, it's 4 points. Beyond 50 yards, it's 5 points. And beyond 60 yards, since there were a bunch of 60-yarders, it's 6 points. Or maybe that's too high. Maybe it stops at 5. But whatever it is, they're not just all 3 points, so that you can get some more points on the board and really reward those who were the heroes for probably the first half of the season were the kickers. At the end of the year, again, a lot of them they got tired or whatever happened. But, whatever it was, they weren't as consistent towards the end of the year. But that would be my one change to sort of spice it up. Yes, frankly, I don't think we're going to get, better players. They're probably going to poach some by they. I mean, the NFL is probably going to poach some of the players. Some of these players are probably going to play in other international leagues, and some of them are going to get injured, and they just won't all be available. Some of them are going to say, listen, I've wasted 5 years trying to become a professional football player. I have an in with, this insurance company or this construction company or this sales company. And, I think maybe it's time at 29 and a half that I actually work on a career so I can have a family and stuff. And so, there's going to be some of that as well. But what if there was something or some things that you would change in the game? What would that be? You're going to get them. You get two, because you already said the 4th and 12 at any time.
Yeah, I feel like I mentioned a couple things. So I'll just go with one more thing. And it's something that we talked about a lot throughout the season. I think that they overdid it when it comes to the microphones on the side of the field. There was too much going on in the broadcast. I love all the little details. I like the behind the scenes content, but it was too much at once. I liked hearing the plays getting called into the quarterback and those coach and quarterback conversations. And I like hearing the thought process, but I don't know. I don't want to hear the entire sideline while I'm trying to listen to Dean Blandino explain a call, while I'm trying to listen to Tom Brady or whoever's on the broadcast say a couple lines. I can't listen to three people talking at once. And it sometimes seemed like it was too much for the producer to even control. So I think if we simplify the broadcast a little bit, it'll be a little bit easier for fans to follow along. It'll be a little bit better because it'll showcase and highlight those features that they're doing that, you know, an NFL or college football broadcast doesn't have. But simplify it. Let's not hear 4,000 different things at once. Let's make sure that we can hear everything that's going on, and let's transition smoothly between each thing. I already talked about the 4th and 12. I already talked about, you know, a couple things. I think the other thing that I just like to see happen is I'd like to see them go after some more veteran NFL players. There's a number of guys right now that are sitting on the shelf waiting for an opportunity. And you know, maybe they tried to, and maybe these guys said, no, you know, you're not established, but let's get some of those bigger names, some of those guys that have been on teams before and are not on teams now. I mean, Breland Speaks was a guy that they brought in that was kind of a big name. What was the pass rusher that they brought in? Not Randy, Taco Charlton.
He had a good game.
Yeah, but he was quiet for a little bit of the season, but they started bringing in a couple of those bigger names, some guys that you recognize. But, I mean, let's be real, unless if you're a super fan, you have no idea who Anthony McFarland is. And I love Anthony McFarland. I loved him dating back to his University of Maryland days. But we need to get some bigger names, because you're not going to be able to bring Kurt Warner on the broadcast once and Tom Brady on the broadcast once and attract fans. You need something that's going to, you know, sing to the fans. And, you know, they've put money into this thing. Maybe that like right now, every player's getting paid the same. Maybe you have to go to a tiered system. Maybe it goes off your experience. Maybe teams are free to negotiate. I don't know what the solution is exactly, because I know that becomes a problem with, you know, everybody being under the same ownership right now. But maybe they need to get private owners. But I'd like to see some bigger names get poached. There's plenty of guys that are on the free agency market. I mean, I just think about like a guy like Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, who, you know, was on the free agent market for weeks and weeks and weeks on the offseason. He would always get a chance with a new team once the season started. But what did he do in between then and when he got his opportunity during the NFL season? And the answer is he didn't play football. Right. So let's go get some of those veteran players, and let's get some higher level talent. And that's what's going to elevate everybody around them.
Do you think that they might have been trying to get Tom Brady to be interested in being an owner of a team, and they'd like to get some more, you know, sort of celebrity owners?
You know, I think that doesn't hurt. You know, I mean, we've seen obviously in all the little Facebook groups and whatever, like Alex Rodriguez for New York team and whatever. I don't think that was the angle, though. I do think that the angle is, you know, Fox is paying him $375 million over the next 10 years to do football for the NFL. So, you know, let's get him a warm up. And I think they said, here, Tom, come to the game. We'll fly your family out. You'll have nice hotel stay. We'll cover everything for you. Here's a new suit. And talk on the game for about 5 minutes. And it was a good warm-up for him. And he was there with a good broadcast crew. He was there with the Fox TV crew. So he got to meet some of the producers and some of the stage team and see it from the other side, which is something that, to my knowledge, I don't think he's really broadcasted before. And he's not going to be on the A team. So I think it was just more of an experience thing. And I think the UFL said, yeah, Fox, please bring him, and we're going to market the living crap out of it.
Yep. All right. Well, I don't know what else to say. I was just checking to see if there was going to be the ratings. I didn't really think it was realistic, because usually the ratings don't come out until Tuesday mornings around 10, 11 in the morning. So unfortunately, the last episode of the LIPP MEN on the UFL will be without the ratings, but take a look at them, and, maybe I'll post them on my Twitter X. Maybe Jake will post on his Twitter X also. So if you follow us,
if you tweet it, I'll repost it.
All right, there we go. And yeah, I don't know. That's it for the season. Thanks to those of you who joined us in the beginning. Thanks for those of you who joined us along the way, and a special thank you for those who stuck with us the entire time. And thank you to Glenn down there in your little box, and all of the various networks that you are partnered with that allowed us to be part of your platform. And Jake, thank you for being talked into doing this, with me. You weren't exactly excited about doing a podcast about a new football league, period, but you agreed to do it, and you jumped right in with both legs. And you brought the numbers, you brought the stats, you brought the passion about the college players and the knowledge that I think was very important for the fire for the show.
And I appreciate it. It was fun. We made something out of nothing. I had a podcast for a little while. I'm not a big social media guy, so it was fun to get back into this talking sports. Obviously, I love football. It's been my passion since day one. And so it was great talking about it and growing with the league. And, hopefully the league comes back for year 2. So we got season 2 of the LIPP MEN on UFL.
Nice. I'm going to look forward to, and hopefully Glenn's world will keep building, because he's a pretty big deal. So keeps telling me that.
I mean, I heard that new song in the beginning. I don't know what kind of tune that was, but that was a nice, interesting pep in the step that we don't normally get at the beginning. So a nice little change of pace.
Trying to get a squonk. All right, well, you teased it, season 2. All right, I'm counting on it.
Okay, well, yeah. So I'm sure these 12 weeks make or break everything for your business model. So don't worry, we got you. We got you covered.
I'll tell you, if I figure out my business model, I'll let you know.
It's a trade secret. None of our damn business.
I don't even know what it is. All right, well, everybody, you can join me Tuesdays and Thursdays on the Fedline Rock Station, cranking out some tunes. The next few weeks may be a little bit lame for me with my audio issues from a barn. But other than that, Friday night flashback. Wednesday is the Paranormal Guys. Friday is the Grid and Guardian, and Saturday is you should jump in, Jeff. It would be right up your alley. We've got a comedian ukulele player for 2 hours.
Oh, sure. What's more me than that?
I can see you show up in tutu, so I would love it.
I mean, liar. See, get it? Liar.
All right, Jake, anything to pimp before we get out of here?
You know what? I put a tweet out the other day saying that I want to be more active on Twitter, and I do stand by that. Twitter is a great source of all real news in the world. So go ahead and follow me at Jake_Lippman, and tweet at me if I'm being a little too silent. But you'll catch me there talking Ravens, Orioles, Wizards, and primarily MMA, and really, I guess whatever comes to my head. If I actually start getting back into it like I used to be. But as I said, social media is not really my thing. It's weird for someone in my generation to kind of shun social media. But with that said, I don't got too much to plug out. I'll just pass it over to my father on that way, so he can talk about, his 70,000 podcasts.
That's right. I had you backwards today. I apologize for that.
It's a little bit. So you see my Twitter X right below me. It's at IcarusFellMD. If you want to see me misbehave more, it's Evil Dose at Garden of Doom. My wrestling podcast is Hammerlock Hangover. My non-wrestling podcast is Garden of Doom and its sister show Garden Views. Garden of Doom this week, I spoke to New York Times bestselling author of The Secret History of the World, and his forthcoming book is The Secret History of the Universe. Mark Booth here in the U.S., Jonathan Black in Europe. That's his real name, Jonathan Black. I don't know why. He told me why I had to do it. But anyway, basically his book takes you through all of the esoteric schools, the secret schools, mystery schools, basically from the beginning of recorded time through present, and sort of explains to you what their evolution is as tied to various zodiac epochs, leaders, historical figures, and perhaps mythical figures or historical figures, depending on how you want to look at certain things. So that was great. I recorded with John F. White, retired professor now, John F. White of Creckenford on YouTube, and he went into his pet peeves in Miss History. So yeah, Graham Hancock came up a few times. So he's one of the greats, John, and he's doing terrific. And tomorrow, I'm dropping on, not tomorrow, Wednesday, I'll drop on Garden Views a licensed therapist who's also a paratherapist and an expert on tantric. So, yeah, a little sex therapy as well. So, that was interesting. And I'm recording with a professor on the occult. I think tomorrow or Wednesday, and then also on someone on climate change later on this week. So we're cooking with gas. We got things going on, and we're always working on booking things. And some of my upcoming shows I'm recording with are people who have actually presented the great courses. So we still are overachieving in our booking. So check out Garden of Doom and Garden Views. I want later, if you haven't had enough of me yet tonight, I will be on Unpopular Review Wrestling, probably within the hour of reviewing Raw. But hey, the Wyatt Six is supposed to debut tonight, so give it up for the Wyatt Six.
The Wyatt Six, like the Wyatt family, that was like 4 people.
Yes, but see, Bray Wyatt died a year ago, and his brother is bringing back the Wyatt Six with a.
Did he really die?
Yeah, no, he really died. He died at age 36. They're very sad. Wyndham Rotunda is his name. He's Mike Rotunda's son. Mike Rotunda, people might remember as IRS, Erwin R. Shyster. Also, he's half of the U.S. Express with Barry Windham, which is where the Windham comes from. Mike Rotunda married Barry Windham's sister. Barry Windham's father is Blackjack Mulligan, for those of you who are old timers. And Barry's brother, also Kendall, was a wrestler for a while, but also Bo Dallas is Bray Wyatt's brother, Taylor Rotundo, and he was released by WWE a few years back, but he was picked up about a year ago. He was going to be brought into the Uncle Howdy story, and then Bray died. We're going to see what's going to come of that. But some wrestlers who you haven't seen in a while: Eric Rowan, Nikki Cross, Dexter Loomis, Joe Gacy from NXT is going to be brought up. Will Alexa Bliss be there? I actually have a shirt with The Fiend and Alexa Bliss merged into one. So I should have worn that for tonight. But, I can only play my shirts for the UFL. What can I tell you?
WWE always innovating.
Always innovating. So.
I will try and figure out how to get the rabbit ears to get it here in Tennessee. So I'll climb up on the barn roof and see if I can find the signal.
Starting January, it'll be on Netflix.
Oh, well, that's true.
I was going to Netflix starting January. Monday nights will still be live, still be 3 hours. That's what we're told. And SmackDown moves to USA. Will still be on Fridays. That's what we're told. So, yeah. Here's some wrestling bonus content for those of you who wanted it, or even if you didn't, and if you're still listening. But yeah, I'm really all over the place. Too many places, so I'm gonna shut myself up right now.
Jake, if I don't talk to you again before next season, I hope I don't have to hear you speaking Russian. So
that's a good plan, right?
Y'all are surrounded down there, so be careful. Be careful. Be safe. So,
are you going to get him an interview with that woman who says that she's never going to listen to the Sportscat radio?
Well, maybe once I get back in town. I've got some things to do. So
I didn't mean this minute. I just meant some point.
I want to talk to Miranda Maverick, and I want to talk to her now.
I don't believe it. You know what? If that might be the smartest demand you could possibly make.
Yeah, I can make it happen. I think
she's both beautiful and she can protect you, so that's terrific.
Fear the Maverick.
Well, she's married, so be careful. She could whip you. So
she would destroy me on the mats.
If you watch my other show, Bobby Dizzle once submitted in the ring with her, and I have volunteered to set it up for a fundraiser for something. I would totally get behind that just to see Bobby Dizzle get knocked out. That'd be great. So.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it'd be good entertainment. So, all right, guys, I appreciate it. We did have a good season. I apologize it ended a little lame tonight because of the barring signal, but that's all I could do. Thank you, guys, and we will see you soon.